Welcome to VGK Today, a daily podcast providing you an inside look at the Vegas Golden Knights 2025 Stanley Cup playoff run. I'm Justin Russo with the Golden Knights on Wednesday, April 23rd, with the VGK traveling to St. Paul, Minnesota after a 5-2 loss in Game 2 against the Minnesota Wild on Tuesday night. Despite a fast-paced start and some highlight reel saves by Adin Hill early on, the Wild quickly took control of the game in the first period, getting goals from Matt Boldy, Marcus Foligno, and Matt Zuccarello to take a 3-0 lead into the intermission. Kirill Kaprizov then made it a 4-0 game early in the middle frame, and while the Knights got goals from Noah Hanifin and Tomas Hertl to get back within 2, a Kaprizov empty netter in the final minutes sealed the win for the Wild. After the break, we'll listen in to my chat with Dan D'Uva as we recap the action right after the game at the Fortress. Well, Golden Knights fans, we have official news on watch parties for Games 3 and 4 of our first round series with the Minnesota Wild. Boulevard Pool at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas will host the team's official watch party for Game 3 on Thursday, and Lee's Family Forum in Henderson will host the official watch party for Game 4 on Saturday. Now, for Thursday, doors are going to open at 5 p.m., festivities are set for 5:30, and puck drop between the Knights and the Wild for Game 3 is set for 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Admission is free for all fans, and the Boulevard Pool offers a spectacular setting overlooking the Las Vegas Strip, and the weather looking great as well on Thursday. Sunny and temperatures in the 80s. Watch party at Boulevard Pool at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. That is Thursday for Game 3. Now, Saturday for Game 4. Doors will open at noon Pacific Time at Lee's Family Forum. Party starts at 12:30, and the game starts at 1 p.m. Parking and admission is free. Both events will feature a DJ, visits from the VGK cast, and raffle prizes including tickets to future Golden Knights games. Giveaways also include VGK sunglasses, rally towels, and more. If you want to check out any of the specifics or get that again, head over to VegasGoldenKnights.com for all the information on the two watch parties coming up for Games 3 and 4 against the Minnesota Wild. Here on VGK Today, Justin Russo and Dan D'Uva here with you high above ringside at T-Mobile Arena after the Golden Knights' 5-2 defeat to the Minnesota Wild in Game 2. Series now tied at 1, heading into Game 3 coming up on Thursday. And Dan, this one, interesting effort by the Golden Knights, I'll say, and you and Gary touched on this post-game, one in which the puck management wasn't there for Vegas. Bruce Cassidy outlined the hunger not being there post-game. What'd you see in this one in a 5-2 loss?
So the underdog come to play and the favorite not match the hunger. Bruce Cassidy has used that word hunger coming into the series after Game 1 and speaking after Game 2 as well. The Minnesota Wild have not had a whole lot of postseason success recently. That's why they have John Hines as their coach. This is his first playoff series as the Minnesota coach. Previously with New Jersey and Nashville, not a lot of success there. This organization has not won a playoff series since 2015. First round or opening round exits in their last 7. So there's a certain desperation and hunger that's going to be built into Minnesota as an underdog. And for the Golden Knights, who were expected to win this series, and a lot of folks suggested this could have been the most lopsided among the opening round matchups. Debatable, of course. But that requires that the favorite team match the intensity of the underdog. And one of the things that I don't want to say you take for granted, but through Golden Knights history, the top line usually does its job. And oftentimes the opposing top line cancels it out. That does happen. You look for big moments and which side has an edge. But so far in this series, even though the Knights are tied in the series 1-1, the top line from Minnesota has been far better than the Golden Knights' top line. Yes, Vegas is deeper and has received production from lower parts in the lineup, but I would say, Justin, that the Minnesota success is in due part to the Knights not having the same level of hunger. You phrase that slightly differently. I don't want to suggest that the Knights were lackadaisical, but you have to meet the intensity and the focus of the other team. And some of the top players for Vegas were just not as sharp as you would expect them to be in a playoff game.
It's interesting, too, because you hear all the cliches thrown around this time of year. Best players have to be your best players. We also hear about the depth all the time, and sometimes deeper teams win. I felt like it was a clash a bit in Game 1 of those styles. The Golden Knights' depth shining through versus Minnesota's top line being the only thing that produced for them. And in this game, it was the top line doing more than enough for Minnesota to come through. That first goal that we saw from Kirill Kaprizov sending the pass out to Matt Boldy, I feel like that's one where it's almost a tip-your-cap moment, a nice play by them, and we'll live with that and we'll come back from it. But then the Golden Knights' puck management left a lot to be desired in that first period, and quickly they were down 3-0.
And also consider, and go just a little bit further back, Justin, some early opportunities for the Knights. The opening minutes looked pretty good. Looked like we were going to have a similar type of game as we saw in Game 1, where it was close the whole way. Adin Hill makes 2 outstanding saves. At 6:29, Eric Sinek from 10 feet away. Hill makes the left pad save. 8 seconds later, Boldy, a snapshot from 27 feet. Glove save by Hill. And you're thinking, okay, Knights have had some good looks. Hill's made a couple of big saves. The formula is now in position. It turned out that Minnesota was just beginning to generate its offensive chances. And while Hill bailed out those first 2, it did not continue that way. As you said, the first goal, Kaprizov to Boldy, maybe tip your cap. I think that the Knights were not well positioned, were not strong enough as they needed to be on the succeeding goals. Foligno's goal, Hartman out of the corner, that was not defended nearly well enough. And while Hill made some excellent saves, could end up being 2 of the better saves of the series when it's all said and done. But, Zuccarello at the end of the first period, Hill gets a piece with his glove, not enough, and it trickles in. The Kaprizov goal early in the second period, Hill has made a pad save, but then he kind of inexplicably rolls over and pushes the puck into his own net as he was sort of sliding. Those are plays that Adin Hill normally is not making. He's normally able to secure those saves. And then, you also consider that, the giveaways. The Knights' most reliable pair in history is McNabb and Theodore. They were -4 today. And for a time, it seemed as though Shea Theodore was benched. And Bruce Cassidy said in his post-game press conference, guys are going to have off nights. It's up to the rest of the group to pick up those players. They have been so productive, so reliable over the years. You want to go out and try to redeem yourself. The trouble is, you end up trying to do too much, and you commit additional mistakes. And it did. It snowballed. That was a word that Bruce used in his post-game press conference. It did snowball for those guys. And, so when I say Shea got benched, I wonder if it's as much as anything. Give him a chance to settle down. You're doing too much. Regroup. Relax. We can handle it for a little bit. Obviously, this team isn't going anywhere if Shea Theodore is not having the type of season that the type of play that he's had all season, setting a variety of records for points by defensemen, etc. So I think that you could try to do too much. Bruce cautioned that going into the series. Justin, speaking more like Victor Olofsson, first playoff game. Dorothea, just his second playoff game. There's so much energy. You want to do so much. I'll even go to McNabb on the Zuccarello goal. McNabb tries to throw a check on Zuccarello. McNabb doesn't need to make that hit. It was like he was hunting for a hit rather than he was trying to make that hit at the offensive blue line. McNabb and his trademark hip checks are typically at the defensive blue line. McNabb sort of misses Zuccarello. McNabb goes down. Zuccarello is sprung forward, and then seconds later, after Theodore gives the puck away to I think it was Johansson, the puck is in the net. So it's, again, both McNabb and Theodore had rough nights. It's going to happen. The good news is, for Golden Knights fans, it happens extremely rarely.
Yes.
And the Knights historically are very good when it comes to bouncing back historically. Just throw one more thing in with this talking point, Justin, and the hunger. We talk about the top lines. The Knights ended up with a ton of attempts, 89 attempts. 34 of those were blocked. Another 23 missed the net. The player who had the most attempts blocked was Jack Eichel. He had 0 shots on goal. That's concerning enough. 5 of his attempts were blocked. All the other players, that's most on the team, but a lot of the other shot attempts that got blocked were from defensemen. They're naturally going to be shooting from the points, and Minnesota plays compact in front of the goal. They're going to block a lot of those outside shots. So, but to me, it's a little bit more concerning that Eichel had 6 attempts, 5 of them were blocked, and 1 missed the net, 0 on goal. That, to me, is, and we know Jack had an upper body injury down the stretch. Is he 100%? I don't know.
Yeah.
He's playing, and so if you're playing, you're expected to perform at a certain level. He had 94 points in the regular season. He has no points in 2 playoff games. It's very rare that Jack would go a couple of games without a point, and certainly without a legitimate scoring chance. Bruce was right to point out Jack had a breakaway in Game 1.
Yep.
That goes in. We're not having this discussion, perhaps. But you do expect your top player to not only produce, but also to drive play. And right now, if you're the head coach, you're showing the players, hey, the other guys are doing it on the top line for them. The top line for the Golden Knights has not.
A lot to touch on there. First up, just going back to the D pairs quickly, it is notable, too, because Bruce Cassidy even switched up the other 2 pairs outside of McNabb and Theodore in Game 1, and he was swapping them around. We saw different guys that had played with each other in the regular season, of course, that he felt confident that he could swap them around. And then you come to this game in Game 2, and the reliable pair of McNabb and Theodore are the ones that have the most trouble, and they struggle the most. And to your final point about the players needing to just kind of play through it and find a way to have success, just like the Minnesota Wild's top line did. Bruce Cassidy touched on that post-game and said, look, they just have to find a way, right? They have to play through it. Your best players have to perform. Didn't anticipate many changes heading into Game 3. And for Game 3, with not having that last change, not being able to dictate matchups as much, how do you see that in terms of the top line being able to generate?
Yeah, I do wonder, in terms of the defensive pairs, how they'll be deployed.
Yeah.
We have so often seen Haig with Pietrangelo, Hannafin with Whitecloud. Early in Game 1, they flip-flopped Haig and Hannafin, and that's how they started today. As the game went along, that sort of went by the wayside, and we saw Haig and Pietrangelo together more. But it was not a clean 3 pairs. There was more of a rotation, and especially when you're trailing, you've got to lean on who's going well. And Hannafin was that guy. Hannafin ends up leading the Golden Knights in minutes in Game 2, scores the goal, and had additional chances even after he scored the goal. So that was part of it. Pietrangelo generates a goal with a primary assist on the one from Hurdle in the 3rd period. So John Stevens, Bruce Cassidy, you see from night to night who's going well. And that's something that this team has done all year. It's not going to be the same guys leading the team in minutes every single night. And so it was very balanced in Game 1. Today it was a little bit less so. We'll see how they go for Game 3. But if you're asking me, Justin, and apparently you are, I'd go 3-27, 14-7, 15-2. And then depending on how the game goes, you obviously will use certain guys in certain situations more often. The other thing was there were no power plays for the Knights in this game. First time in team history, 97 playoff games. This is the first one they had 0 power play opportunities.
And that, of course, hurts the top line players and the top end players a little bit as well. They get fewer touches, of course, than they would with some power plays in the game. And, for the Golden Knights, looking to bounce back in Game 3, see if they can take the lead again in the series. Something sticks in my mind from what Mark Stone told you before Game 1 when they went into Dallas and they won a couple of games to start last season, or last playoff series in the first round last year. And he said, in hindsight, that might not have been the best thing. We loosened up a little bit in Games 3 and 4. Now, limited sample size here. They were only up 1 game, but perhaps some of that same mindset creeping in. Did they feel a little too comfortable perhaps tonight?
I always resist that because maybe, it's hard to paint with broad strokes.
Yeah.
There have been some very impressive individual performances. Brandon Saad to me has looked great.
Really good.
He's looked really good. Obviously, Tomas Hurdle with now 2 goals in the series as well. To me, there are some really impressive elements about what the Golden Knights have done here in the first couple of playoff games, but it is a team game. Mm-hmm. So we're inclined to paint with broad strokes, but I'm not sure that that's always applicable. Braden McNabb said this, Bruce Cassidy said this with respect to A games and B games.
Yeah.
You're not always going to have your A game. And in the playoffs, you expect if you don't have your A game, you're going to have your B game. Well, for some guys today, it was C, maybe even D, which is very rare. But as I mentioned earlier, the Knights, especially some of the guys who were having a struggle today, they rarely have consecutive B games, let alone consecutive C games.
Yeah.
So you would like to think that they'll bounce back. And don't do too much. Do your part. Bruce said these things going into game one. Act well your part. Therein the honor lies, is Alexander Pope. It's a quote that George Washington used to throw out there. But to me, that's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything more than you've done all season. In the playoffs, with the energy ratcheted up, you so much want to contribute, or if you make a mistake, make up for it, and it leads to additional mistakes. So that, to me, is going to be some of the mantra here. Do your part, help your team, don't try to do too much.
And I think the reason we look to some of the things that have been said and some of the things that happened on the ice in terms of trying to explain this performance is because it is so rare. It is not typical of the Golden Knights to have a performance like this. They did come back in the game a bit, made it 4-2, and had a push in the third period, but just couldn't come out with the victory at the end of the day, and they go back to Minnesota looking for a road win, as you said in your final call. And as we go back to Minnesota, I would like to give you the opportunity now to. I know there's a bookstore back in Minnesota that you are excited to hit back up in St. Paul.
Subtext Books was the last commercial establishment I believe I visited before the pandemic in 2020. As longtime Golden Knights fans will remember, the team had been on the road, came back home, and then went to Minnesota. The schedule was slightly adjusted, and we were in Minnesota for a game against the Wild, and that was the game that was paused. That's when everything eventually was put on hold. And make a long story short, before the team managed to depart Minnesota the day that the game was to be played, we were told, stay near the hotel, don't go too far. And we heard at that point, maybe it'll be a 2-week pause. So I walked down the street to Subtext Books and picked, 2 weeks, I'll get 2 books.
Yeah, hold you over.
Well, obviously the rest is history, but I got a Hemingway book that was a companion to the PBS miniseries, terrific, a collection of his some shorter works, and also one of the Malcolm Gladwell books. And I then, the following year, because Vegas and Minnesota were in the same division, we often went back to St. Paul, and I remember going into Subtext Books and asking if they remembered me. I've told this story several times before, but of course I enjoy reading very much, and yes, I look forward to stopping by Subtext Books when the Golden Knights are in St. Paul the next few days. Among many other establishments, that's what happens in a playoff series. You get to enjoy a city for a few days. But the one place, if any Golden Knights fans are listening to this who are going to St. Paul, Tom Reed's. Tom Reed's Hockey Bar is not maybe 2 blocks from the arena. And Tom Reed, of course, is one of the great pro players in Minnesota history, player for the North Stars and current radio color commentator. Just a gentleman, ambassador for the sport, just identified so much with hockey in the state of Minnesota. And his hockey bar is just, it is awesome. I will leave it at that. I recommend the Salsalita salad.
Okay.
And if you are in the front part of Tom Reed's, check out all the memorabilia, but try to find your way to the back bar, which is all Minnesota North Stars themed.
Okay.
Tom Reed's first pro contract is framed on the wall. There's so many things that can really capture your attention. I did once receive the behind-the-scenes tour from Tom himself.
Oh, some special stuff right there.
And there's the wings. I think they're called I want to call them the Gold Rush wings.
Okay.
Someone will tweet me this, but these wings are out of this world. They're great. So, yeah, go to Tom Reed's. I am looking forward to visiting Tom Reed's.
Some solid recommendations for our Golden Knights fans that are either traveling to St. Paul or some that are already in St. Paul, maybe.
We had so many games there that year in 2021, regular season and the 7-game playoff series, and it was fun, of course, because we were coming out of the pandemic, Justin, and there were just a lot of really friendly folks, broadcasters, writers, people around the team, and always enjoy visiting St. Paul, Minnesota.
Well, sounds good to me. Happy reading to you, and safe travels to St. Paul.
Thank you. If you have any book suggestions, let me know.
Yeah, certainly, and maybe you out there as well. Let us know.
There you go.
Well, it was fun to recap Game 2 with Dan, and some really solid recommendations there if you find yourself in St. Paul during this series or really any time in the future. Subtext books, and of course, Tom Reed's. Mark it down for your next visit. We'll step aside once more, and when we return, we will listen to what Bruce Cassidy and Reilly Smith had to say after Game 2. Golden Knights fans, you can experience the excitement of playoff hockey firsthand with a limited number of tickets still available at the Fortress. And of course, with the series tied 1-1 now, that means Game 5 will be back at the Fortress coming up next Tuesday. Visit VegasGoldenKnights.com to learn more and get tickets. Speaking of tickets, the Vegas Nighthawks are back at Lee's Family Forum coming up on May 3rd and May 10th. You can catch the fast-paced, family-friendly action of indoor football with tickets available at nighthawksfootball.com. Well, frustrating loss for the Golden Knights, 5-2 to the Minnesota Wild in Game 2, as the series is now tied 1-1, heading back to St. Paul, Minnesota for Game 3 on Thursday. But before we get to that, let's hear what Bruce Cassidy had to say after Game 2.
Yeah, hey, Bruce. Chris Chapman, Fox Sports Las Vegas postgame show. You got the start you wanted. First 5 minutes were really good. What changed after those first 5 minutes?
Well, we didn't take care of the puck. It's typically when things don't go well for us, that's where it starts. They got behind us after we didn't take care of the puck as well. So you're giving their best players easy offense, right? And then the playoffs, it's a bad formula. It's a bad formula. You're supposed to make it hard on them and see if they'll battle through, and we didn't. Their top guys got some easy offense, and they finished, and so we'll have to correct that.
What adjustments, if any, did the Wild make between Game 1 and 2?
I don't know. They played a lot different. I mean, we didn't take care of the puck, so I don't know if there's an adjustment in that, right? I mean, we got to make better plays, stronger plays, safer plays. They forechecked hard. They did that the other night, I thought. They're trying to force our D and our wingers on the wall. I think they protected the middle well again. We were able to get outside ice when we did. We got ozone time. They protected the middle of the ice. Second period, we started stretching them out a little better with better decisions at the top for when we put pucks to the net, and probably had an opportunity to get back in the game in that period, to be quite honest. I thought did a lot of things well from then on in. I don't know if they changed their game much, to be perfectly honest. I think we gave them life early, and this is the playoffs. They're a good team. They're a good defensive team. It's right up their alley, right? They play with a lead. They know how to play with a lead. So that was on us early on. I credit them for, you could say, forcing us into mistakes, but some of them, we just got to take care of the puck better.
Dan, Nathan, Paul.
Bruce, Danny Webster, Las Vegas Review-Journal. Uncharacteristic night for Shea. Also, what can be said as far as trying to, he's a veteran player obviously, but what can be said to just try and pick him up to get ahead?
Well, he's trying to do too much out there. It's that simple against a team that's collapsed, and so we've got to do a better job of getting him the information what the other team's doing. But he's a pretty smart player. He sees what's going on out there, and I think he was light on the puck tonight. What do you want me to say? He's a great player for us. It wasn't his night, and then it snowballed. So there's a player trying to, make amends, and I respect that. I like that. But it didn't go that way, and then someone has to pick him up by putting out a fire, right? That's what good teams do. And their chances there in the stretch, they all went in. So we've got to do a better job putting out fires, to pick the guy up. That's hockey, right? We're not all going to be perfect every night. So we didn't do a good enough job of that as a team. So when it goes sideways on someone next time, we got to be, hey, pick that guy up till he finds his game, whoever it is, and they will. We're a good team, and get over the hump and get back to work. And eventually we did get back to work. That's the positive for the team. I think we gave ourselves an opportunity to get back in the game, but when you're down that much, it's hard. It doesn't happen very often, but I watched Edmonton get back in the game last night, so it can happen. I think our guys had good belief. I think we kept playing hard. We just couldn't finish to get that, 4-2. You get it to 4-3, all of a sudden, now there's maybe some doubt over there, but never quite got there.
Paul and Jesse.
Hi, Bruce. Paul De Los Santos, NHL.com. How do you balance the short-term memory versus the teaching moments at this point of the year?
Well, I don't. There's always teaching moments. A playoff series can be long, a run can be long. So doesn't mean they have to be or they will. We got to play better. But I said it the other day, and I believed it in the first part of the game. They're hungrier than us and more competitive. Like, no one cares what we did 2 years ago. Nobody cares. They respect us for what we did, but they don't care now. They want. There's 16 teams that want the trophy, and they're hungry. And that every year that starts right in the playoffs. So some of our guys got to realize we started Sunday here. So you get hungry, get competitive. And then halfway through the game, we started to see better of that. So that's your teaching moment. Get hungrier, get competitive. It's not easy this time of year, and we'll be fine. I believe that. But they were hungrier than us and more competitive than us the first half of the game. And, it showed.
Jesse.
Hi, Bruce. Jesse Granger at The Athletic. The top line's been quiet for these first two games, and you mixed the pieces around a little bit in that game. What do you need to get more out of those guys?
Well, it's going to be Barbashev or Howden for the most part. Those are the guys that have played there. So, we don't want to throw it in a blender. I think that's not necessary because I thought Carlson's line was generating some offense. Hurdle's line's been very good. So I'm not going to steal from somewhere necessarily. If they're elite, world-class players, and they got to get going, right? To me, there's a little bit on, hey, you know what? The other team's top guys are all over the sheet. It's time. No, we've got to help them. We're trying to help them. We'll give them a matchup. We'll give them ozone draws. Power play touches can sometimes do that for you, but there hasn't been a lot of that on either side in this series. So it's the same for both teams that way. So it's just the onus becomes a little bit on. Okay, I'm gonna take what's there, and I'm gonna push through a little bit, right? And that's where we're at. It's early. I got all the faith in the world in those guys, but and that gets over analyzed sometimes early in a series too, right? Like the other night, Jack had a breakaway. Stoney was in all alone. Barbie had some good looks, so it's not like they just didn't finish the other night. Tonight, a little less so. I think they need to get through the neutral zone quicker and establish ozone territory is one thing. That line has to, the line rush game, they've been real accountable to try to have people back against them. So that's what they're going to have to deal with. But that's playoff hockey. They've been through that before. So we'll show them a little bit of that tomorrow. But that's where they're going to have to create a little more in the ozone. And we started doing that in the second period on, and we just couldn't quite finish enough.
A mix of frustration and clarity from Bruce Cassidy. Frustration in the sense that the Knights didn't execute the way they wanted to in Game 2, but offering some clarity on what he believes to be the issues, and that it is mostly on them. The puck management, not finishing on their scoring chances, and just not playing a clean game overall. Fixable things for the Golden Knights, but they need to go out and do them now in Game 3 if they want to regain the lead in this series. So we heard from Bruce Cassidy. Let's get a player's perspective now on Game 2 and hear what Reilly Smith had to say post-game.
Reilly, what area did you feel like was the overall difference maker in that game?
They just capitalized on their scoring chances. I think we did a good job controlling the pace of the play for the majority of the game. I think we have to do a better job getting second chance opportunities, getting pucks through. They did a good job collapsing in front of their net and pushing pucks to the outside. So just one of those games where I think we controlled a lot of the play. They would get a break, and it would be a grade A scoring chance, and they'd make the most of it.
Reilly, what changed in that first period tonight?
What do you mean by that?
It looked like you guys kind of started out hot in the first 5 minutes, and then Minnesota kind of turned it up a little bit.
I scored a goal. I mean, I think throughout the entire game, I think we did a good job controlling the pace. it's disheartening when, you're playing well, they get a chance, they score. You control the next 5 minutes, they get a chance, they score. So we just got to be a little bit smarter and not give them grade A opportunities. They have skilled players that'll put the puck in the back of the net, and you give them opportunities.
You talked about how you feel like you controlled the pace most of the game. What did you like about what you did after that early goal in the second?
I think we had a lot of good sustained pressure. Our forecheck was good. We were putting pucks behind their D, forcing them to turn the puck over, changing in the offensive zone. A lot of good looks, just not enough one in the net.
How much does having the Stanley Cup run you guys had, being able to get through all the different ups and downs, help in a situation like this to say, we understand these kind of things?
Yeah, you'll use every piece of experience you can, and I think that's something you should do. If you want to go far in the playoffs, it's not going to be quick and it's not going to be easy. So there's a lot of positives we did tonight. There's things that we can do better, and I think that's just the mindset going into tomorrow.
Reilly Smith using the word disheartening there to describe the loss in Game 2 to the Minnesota Wild. Golden Knights frustrated again with their inability to execute on the ice, but the series is still tied 1-1, and they still have a great opportunity to regain that series lead coming up on Thursday in Game 3. That'll just about wrap things up for today's show. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to VGK Today, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform, as we'll be back every day throughout the Knights' 2025 Stanley Cup playoff run with new episodes. Tune in tomorrow as Ashley Weiss joins our program. Justin Russo signing off for VGK Today.